What's up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Wraparound, brought to you by the Hockey News. I'm your host, Emma Lingan. I'm joined today by Michael Augello and Frank Zawrazky of the Hockey News. And before we get into all of our latest and greatest topics from around the NHL in bite-sized portions, as we always do want to remind you that we are the ultimate hockey fix here at the Hockey News for over 75 years. Now you can get 12 issues delivered straight to you, packed with stories, stats, and a bonus gift issue to kick things off. Head over to thn.com and get in on the action. All right, guys, lots to talk about today. So want to get it started with the New Jersey Devils, team that we haven't really talked about a lot ever since Jack Hughes got injured. But, maybe as a result of that, the Devils do seem to be going through their toughest stretch of the season right now. So, of course, without Hughes, they've lost 5 games in a row now. They've been outscored 20-7 during that stretch. Jake Allen and Jacob Markstrom have a combined .894 save percentage and a 3.03 goals against in their last 10 games. So, Mike, I'm going to go to you first. What's been more concerning with the Devils as of late? Do you think it's their lack of scoring or their goaltending and defense?
Well, we assume that the scoring will bounce back once Hughes comes back. But, since Hughes is not there, teams can concentrate their top checkers against Nico Hischier, and that sort of limits what the Devils can do. I saw them play recently in Buffalo, and that's what the Sabres did. But, I think the greater concern going forward once Hughes gets back is the fact that their goaltending, which was supposed to be a strength this year with Markstrom and Allen. Markstrom had an injury. He was out for about a month. Allen filled the gap pretty well, but now that they're both back, it seems that they've regressed as a team. And, you have to focus on the defense as well. You don't exactly have Norris Trophy candidates when it comes to like Dougie Hamilton. He's not a defensive defenseman. He's more of an offensive puck rusher. And Luke Hughes is sort of learning on the job. So is Simone Nemec. So I think there's concerns in both areas, but I think the offensive situation will be corrected once Hughes comes back. But in the long run, I think it's the defense and the goaltending.
Frank, do you agree? Is that your biggest concern when you look at what New Jersey's doing right now?
Looking at New Jersey, I wouldn't even say it's the goaltending that's concerning. I would just say it's the blue line that concerns me the most. Look at the injuries that they have. Brendan Dillon's hurt. Dougie Hamilton is having his worst statistical year since his rookie year. He's on pace for 24 points in 82 games. Kovacevic and Pescian are on LTIR. I don't think it's fair to put it all on the goaltending when the defense is not performing. Like you said, Mike, Dougie Hamilton's more of an offensive defenseman. His bread and butter is being that fourth guy on the rush, helping the forecheckers into the zone. So when you don't have him producing, it kind of causes a trickle-down effect with regard to the other defensemen. Add into the fact that you've got a guy like Brendan Dillon hurt. You don't know when Pesce and Kovacevic are coming back. So I would say it's the blue line specifically, not the goaltending, that concerns me the most. I'd like to see what happens when those two guys come back. If when they come back, the goaltending is still staying the same, I would concur with you on that, Mike.
Well, we know that the Devils are certainly, they've been looking for additions to their blue line, one in particular by the name of Quinn Hughes, of course. But in addition to those Quinn Hughes rumors, Elliot Friedman reported over the weekend that 2 players that he believes to be targets for the Devils this season are actually up front, both veterans with the Nashville Predators, Steven Stamkos and Ryan O'Reilly. So Stamkos, of course, has a full no move clause. He's not going anywhere unless he wants to. O'Reilly doesn't have movement protection, but Barry Trotz in Nashville are treating him as if he does, and he gets to dictate whether or not he gets traded. So, Mike, do either of those players sound like a strong fit for the Devils? And looking at what Barry Trotz has come out and said, particularly about O'Reilly, what do you think it would take to get either of those guys?
I think O'Reilly is a great fit as a number 2 center. The thing is that unless Jack Hughes doesn't come back, he would be a number 3 center in New Jersey behind Hughes and Hischier. So you'd be paying that high price of a first-round pick and an A-level prospect for a third-line center. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Stamkos, I think we all know, He's not a center any longer. I think he could be a good complementary winger. But he's got the no move clause, and I don't think he's going to New Jersey. I mean, in fact, I don't think he's going to Vancouver or Montreal or Toronto. I mean, it's going to have to be a very certain situation, probably a no tax situation. And that sort of reminds me of where he used to be, but I don't know whether they want to take him back or not. So I don't think either one of them is going anywhere. But if at all, O'Reilly, but it'd have to be the absolute right situation for him.
Frank, you agree with that?
The way I look at the New Jersey Devils is the way that some people in the 80s looked at Stretch Armstrong. You're pulling one arm in one direction and you're pulling another arm in another direction. You've got your current playoff cup window, but you're also kind of holding out until prospects like Yegorov and Shane Lachance are regular NHL guys. If the Devils can make a move without sacrificing too much, do it. But you don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul. You don't want to rob your future to go into the present if you've got an opportunity where these guys can come up in a season or two. I mean, Lachance has been up a few times with the Devils this year. He's looked solid from what I've seen. I've liked his development since the junior level in Youngstown and his time at Boston U. So I'm interested to see what they decide to do. I don't think they should go all in with like one of their blue chip prospects to get one of these guys. But if there's a 3-team trade situation where you can give someone an incentive to take it. Perfect example is that Lachance trade where Boston and Edmonton worked with New Jersey. I think that could be an option, but you don't want to put all your chips to the center of the table when you're not fully ready.
Very true. Well, sticking with the trade chatter here, it's getting to be that time of year where we're starting to hear the rumors crop up a little bit. Elliot Friedman also reported this week there could be some traction with the LA Kings working on a trade for Phillip Danault. So Friedman said there are some reports that he could be on the trade market, and I could see this being a case where both sides would want it to happen. So Danault, just by way of review, 32 years old, has just 5 points in 28 games with LA this season. He's under contract for one more year after this year at a $5.5 million cap hit. So, Mike, do you see this happening? What teams could be interested in a player like Danault, you think?
Well, it's questionable whether it's going to happen because you have to look at it in the focus of the LA Kings losing Anze Kopitar to retirement at the end of the year. Now, Phillip Danault is not a number one center. He never will be a number one center, but defensively, he fits in that number 2 slot if they decide that, Quentin Byfield is going to be the number 1 center. And they've been sort of playing him at wing, playing him at center. I think that's in a perfect world, that's what they would like to see. Danault, I mean, I'm sure there will be interest in him. He's got another year at $5.5 million. He's a defensive specialist. And you could put all the teams that have been talking about looking for a number 2 center, like the Montreal Canadiens, where he used to play. I think the talk from Vancouver is probably ended because Vancouver is probably in the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes rather than being in the playoff race. So, but there are teams out there looking for an effective number 2 or even number 3 center. $5.5 million is a little pricey for a number 3, but if it's a team that is looking to make a deep run and they have cap space, then you could do a lot worse than Phillip Danault as a checking center.
Yeah, certainly a guy who could draw some interest, I think, is a depth piece. Frank, what are your thoughts? Where do you think a player like Danault could end up?
So I was thinking similarly to Mike on that, but I was looking on the flip side of Montreal, and I actually think he'd be a great fit in Washington. With Pierre-Luc Dubois out for an extended period of time, he's got that core muscle surgery. They're in need of somebody who isn't going to have a lot of pressure on them because, like you said, he's not a top center, Mike, but he could be someone that Spencer Carberry brings in and elevates his game. Remember what happened? Pierre-Luc Dubois left LA in that 1-for-1 swap with Darcy Kemper, and Pierre-Luc Dubois completely changed his game and elevated it. Am I saying that Danault is going to be a 50-point scorer or a 30-goal scorer? No. But I think that Spencer Carberry, should he go to Washington, that could be something to keep an eye on down the stretch. Washington's had some injury issues, with Dowd being out of the lineup at times. Now with Pierre-Luc Dubois being out, they've got some goaltending issues with Charlie Lindgren on injured reserve. I think it makes sense if you're not going for broke because Pierre-Luc Dubois will be back by the end of the year. I believe it was a 3 to 4 month timetable on that surgery. So just kind of play it by ear. It wouldn't shock me if you get, maybe a San Jose picks him up on a deal just to try to help their defense out, which has been struggling. Speaking of Washington, they had a 7 spot put up on them the other week on their home rink. So I think that could potentially help out. San Jose and Washington are my 2 spots, but only if it makes sense for the teams receiving him.
Well, Danault definitely, regardless, a name to keep an eye on as the trade rumors start to heat up here. Of course, another name that we have to talk about if we're talking about trade rumors is Tristan Jarry. So Friedman reported this weekend he thinks there's quote legitimate interest from the Edmonton Oilers in acquiring Tristan Jarry. Of course, Mike, you and I have talked on the show at length about Edmonton's goaltending woes. So Friedman mentioned that things could be complicated with this, considering the Penguins have already said they are not going to retain salary on Jarry if they do trade him. So he's got 2 years at $5.375 million remaining. The Oilers, on the other hand, as we know, have very little cap space to work with. So Friedman also said that he thinks the Oilers would prefer to have a Skinner-Jarry tandem rather than shipping out Stuart Skinner entirely, which could complicate things even more here. So, Mike, break this down. Do you think Jarry is someone the Oilers should do their best to work out a trade for, or is it even worth it?
Well, there's a cautionary tale here when it comes to Tristan Jarry, because if you remember the one time that he did play, first of all, he's been injury prone his entire career. He's a good goaltender regular season, but he's had injury issues throughout his career. When he did play in the playoffs, he was the main reason why a Pittsburgh Penguins team in 2021 lost to the New York Islanders. He was horrendous in that series. So for a team whose goal is to win a Stanley Cup, you're trading for a guy who, you're looking for that guy to be to stand on his head in the playoffs when you've had 2 goaltenders, at least one in Skinner, who you've had problems with the last 2 years, not coming up big when it's necessary. And I don't know whether you're really improving yourself there. Then you go to the cap situation, and unless Kyle Dubas is interested in taking Darnell Nurse back in the trade because he played at Sault Ste. Marie, I don't know how they make this deal, because you just said Dubas will not retain salary on Jarry. He's got I believe a couple years left on the contract, and the players going back in terms of comparable salary from Edmonton. I mean, they're not trading Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and they're not trading Matthias Ekholm. So I don't see how there's a fit, and I really think if they're looking for a goaltender to take that next step and help them in the playoffs, then they should be looking at Jordan Binnington and not Tristan Jarry.
To me, trying to combat the Stuart Skinner inconsistency by adding Tristan Jarry feels a little bit like fighting fire with fire. Frank, what do you think about all of this?
There's an old expression, don't look for bread in a hardware store. And that's exactly what the Oilers would be doing if they dealt with the Penguins on this one. If there's an opportunity for a 3-team trade where you can get some salary retained, fine, go for it. But you don't want to look for bread in a hardware store. Tristan Jarry, good goalie. Like you said, Mike, he's had a lot of injuries throughout his career. It wouldn't kill him to look for someone younger. I mean, just, looking at the Providence Bruins in the American League, Michael DiPietro has been insane. He has been one of the best American Hockey League goaltenders. But Boston has their 2 starters locked down with Swayman and Korpisalo. That could be something you look at, where you get a talented youngster, you try to extend your cup window a few years with someone like DiPietro, who has shown a lot of promise, hasn't had a lot of NHL time. Maybe he goes up on some kind of league minimum trade deal and you bring him up and see what happens. But bringing in Tristan Jarry, unless it's through a 3-team trade where there's some salary retained, looking back at what the Oilers did last year with Trent Frederick, that would be a similar style deal that could bring Jarry over. But I don't see that potentially happening.
Regardless, Edmonton definitely going to be looking to fix or slightly upgrade their goaltending situation in any way that they can this year. So definitely a situation to keep an eye on. Shifting gears a little bit here, Hockey Canada this week announced its World Junior Camp roster, and 6 players who have already made their NHL debuts are on the list. So just to review, you've got Michael Misa from San Jose, Harrison Bronicky from Pittsburgh, Zane Parekh with Calgary, Braden Coots, Vancouver, Brady Martin with Nashville, and Jet Luchenko with Philadelphia. So, Mike, looking at that list, which of those players do you think could have the biggest impact for Canada at the World Juniors, considering all of those guys already have NHL experience?
If you take motivation into consideration, I think it'll be Parekh, because Parekh was jilted by Team Canada last year. He should have been selected. He wasn't selected. Hockey Canada should have purged every bit of their management from that selection and a few other decisions that they made. I also think Luchenko, because he's played in the NHL 2 years. He played a little bit last year. I think it was 4 or 5 games. He played a little bit this year before the roster situation for a 19-year-old. Either he goes back to the OHL, or he has no option of going to the American Hockey League this year. So I think he has a little bit additional experience as a 19-year-old playing against adults, and I do think that Parekh will really want to show himself on the international stage. And really, I'll yield to Frank on this. I don't see anybody with the puck rushing and offensive ability on the blue line for Canada. If Matthew Schaefer was there, then yeah, he would rival Parekh in terms of being able to carry the puck up the ice. I don't see anybody else besides Parekh being that quarterback. So I think he's going to be very valuable for Canada.
Frank, what do you think?
So I like what you're saying about Luchenko. He's got more NHL experience. A guy I'm interested to see what he does is Michael Misa. And the reason I say Michael Misa is he's in the American League on a conditioning loan right now. And the conditioning loan helps you get bigger, faster, smarter, stronger. And that kind of thing could help him at the World Junior level. If you're looking at the transition from the OHL to the NHL, there's obviously a significant jump. But if you're playing in the American Hockey League which is objectively a more physical league than the NHL, where you've got some of the older players in there. You've got guys on both sides of that bell curve, so to speak. It will be interesting to see how he handles that physicality and then brings it to the World Juniors. I think Luchenko is a great puck rushing guy that could make a lot of waves. But if Michael Misa finds his stride, I wouldn't be shocked if he has a stellar World Junior performance, especially coming off of that conditioning loan in San Jose with the Barracuda. They do a great job developing their guys. Askarov was there for a bit. Now he's up with the big club, and he's doing a solid job given the defense he has around him. So I think Michael Misa would be my dark horse, but I like Luchenko. So I'll keep with those two.
Well, sticking with you here, Frank, I want to ask you, sticking with the World Juniors topic, of course, now the sort of new situation, uncharted territory this year is that you've got top tier prospects, both drafted and undrafted, who have elected to join NCAA teams this season. So there's going to be a huge NCAA presence at the World Juniors this year. So, Frank, in your opinion, which player that's currently playing on an NCAA team do you think will end up having the biggest impact at the World Juniors this year?
So I'm going to go with 2 of them from Team USA. And the first one is kind of pretty obvious. I think he'll be a shoo-in for the captaincy, and that's Cole Hudson. Cole Hudson is an explosive defenseman, absolutely dynamic. He can make guys look silly, draw players into him. Seeing what he did when he was at the national team development program, seeing what he did at Boston University and what he continues to do at Boston University, he could theoretically be in the American Hockey League right now, at least from my purview. But another guy I want to highlight is someone who's been absolutely a magician. Now you see the puck, now you don't. And that's Riker Lee. Riker Lee, I had a chance to watch him a significant portion when I was in the USHL last year broadcasting. Riker Lee, I know his family. He's a great character person. And, when you talk about players on a World Junior team that are coming together for the first time, character is huge. Riker and his family, I've known them for about 4 years, went to school with his brother, and they're a top-tier family. And Riker puts in the work, he executes, and he's selfless. He knows when he needs, as Kenny Rogers says, he knows when he needs to hold it and when he needs to fold it. He knows when he needs to dish it off and when he can take it himself. There was a viral video on X a few weeks ago of him juggling the puck to himself. I believe it was against Notre Dame. I mean, if he's able to do that against Notre Dame, where he's got some older kids with him that may want to throw a body shoulder to chest hit, if he's going against younger guys, imagine what he's going to be able to do. I mean, I really think Riker Lee is someone to keep an eye on at this World Junior Tournament. Obviously, Cole Hudson will most likely be the captain, and I look for him to take charge of that squad. But Riker Lee is somebody that I've had my eye on, A, with him being a Chicago guy, watching him through the years, and B, seeing his evolution in Madison last year in the USHL and seeing how he's transitioned well at Michigan State. I really like his game.
Yeah, Riker Lee, big draft pick for Nashville in this most recent draft. So I know that Barry Trott's very eager to see what he can do and get him to Nashville as soon as possible. Switching back to the NHL, the Kraken going through it right now. They've lost 6 straight. They are quickly falling lower and lower in the Western Conference standings with an 11-10-4 record. Offense, of course, has been the big struggle for them this season. They're 31st in goals per game out of 32. The Kraken have some older but capable offensive players who've been previously rumored as trade pieces, guys like Jared McCann, Jaden Schwartz, Jordan Eberle. But the team has made some moves that would suggest that they're looking to compete now, making signings like Brandon Montour, trading for Mason Marchment, Capo Caco. I mean, Mike, what direction do you see this Kraken team going in through the rest of the season? Did they pivot and try to sell, or do they still try to go for it?
They're going to be the most popular phone call to be called by NHL general managers next to Kevin Adams, or if Kevin Adams is fired, Jarmo Kekalainen, because Jason Botterill has 5 prominent unrestricted free agents in Schwartz, who's on the IR right now, Eberle, Marchment, Ilya Tovlinin, and Jamie Alexiak. You factor that in. If they drop out, and right now they're at 28 points. Right now, they're only 3 points out of a wild card. But if this losing streak continues, then mathematically, by the time March the 6th comes around, you're going to have to sort of lay the groundwork to for the possibility that you're going to have to trade off these guys. Now, some of them that may re-sign in Seattle. It's no tax state in Washington State, so that's an attractive, and it's a new franchise, and they apparently treat their players well. But there are certain players, I mean, they just acquired Marchment from Dallas in the offseason. That's the type of forward that teams are looking for at the deadline, a physical winger who, stirs the pot. And Alexiak, I just have this weird feeling that if the Dallas Stars strike out in the Rasmus Anderson sweepstakes, that going back to Dallas where Alexiak played for a long portion of his career, that would make a little bit of sense. So I think if I had to guess one way or the other, I think they're going to be sellers at the deadline, and then there'll be players in free agency in the summer.
Frank, what do you think?
I tend to agree with you on that, Michael. The only caveat is I would not trade Jordan Eberle. And the reason I wouldn't trade Jordan Eberle is if a team is in a slump, the captain is the guy that's in the room saying, come on, guys, we got to do this night in and night out. If you take that piece away, it's only going to get worse for the Kraken, at least from my purview. So if the Kraken want to make a run and try to run the table and get back in this, you can't trade Jordan Eberle, guy who's got a lot of experience, who can work with some of these players that may not have been hitting their stride lately in this losing streak. So I think it's the time where you want to have a little bit of patience, see how things come around. But if push comes to shove, I tend to agree with you. You trade some of those guys. I think Dallas may pay a premium to get Alexiak back, pay higher than market price. So it's kind of a, what can you do for me? Again, as I said earlier in the show about Tristan Jarry, you don't want to rob your future to satisfy the present. So, Seattle's got a lot of good prospects coming through their ranks. So I'm interested to see what they end up doing, but I would say all the guys you mentioned are fair game except for Jordan Eberle.
And this is a team too in Seattle that's already traded a captain once, their first captain in Mark Giordano. So could be looking, as you said, to kind of stabilize the ship there. Mike, we've got to talk about the Buffalo Sabres since you're here. Buffalo, of course, 2-9-2 on the road this season. Not that you need to be reminded, after a 7-4 loss to the Calgary Flames on Monday. They've lost the first 3 games of their Western road trip. So, of course, they demoted center Noah Osland on Sunday, which prompted Lindy Ruff to say that he set other guys up and defensively played well, so there was no negative. The only negative was him going back down. The club, of course, currently carrying 3 goalies. They're now at 8 points out of a playoff spot because the East is so tightly compacted. Do you think this is the Sabres season? Do you think the season's a lost cause, or is there a chance they salvage something here?
Yeah, the Eastern Conference is extremely tightly compacted, except for Buffalo, and that it's wash, rinse, repeat when it comes to the Sabres. This is exactly the same place that they were in last year, although I think they were a little further out because right around this time was the 13-game losing skid that basically ended their season. Right now, the situation, I know that people around Buffalo are looking at the 3 goaltender situation with Ellis, Luukkonen, and Lyon. I don't think that's the cause here. I don't think that sending Noah Osland down, which I didn't think was a smart move, but I understood because of the waiver considerations. He was out waiver exempt. So, sending him down for a couple weeks, once they come back from the road trip, they send the extra defenseman back and they bring Osland back up. It's just a general malaise right now with this organization. It's 14 years going on 15. Elliot Friedman, David Pagnotta, a lot of the insiders have been reporting the same thing. Alex Tuck, no talks of the negotiation going forward at this point. Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin, they put any talk of them being traded on hold to see where the season was going this year. The season's going nowhere. So what does that mean? That means in the summer, are they on the market? Somebody has to play for this franchise, but the problem is that from the management to the coaching staff, things are just in chaos. And I just don't see anything changing. And I don't know right now, the way things are going, it will change now or in the future.
Well, on that uplifting note, Frank, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I do. And I agree with you. And, I'm from Chicago. So the Blackhawks had their own similar situation in the early 2000s. Buffalo Sabres need someone like Rocky Wirtz did in Chicago to bring this franchise back from the dead. If you've got a hometown kid, Alex Tuck, who doesn't want to negotiate, you've got big problems. You've got big problems. You need a strong leader, whether it's a new GM, new president, new ownership, whatever you want to call it. Somebody needs to do for Buffalo what Rocky Wirtz did for Chicago in 2008. He revived that team, and within a few seasons, they were contending for a Stanley Cup. So, do I think Buffalo has an opportunity to do that? Only time will tell.
Only time will tell, indeed.
Well, I'll just say this. There was talk after Brendan Shanahan was let go by the Maple Leafs of him having interest in the Buffalo Sabres job. And reportedly, he contacted Terry Pegula and said, "You need a team president." And the response from Terry Pegula was, "We have a team president, me." That tells you all you need to know. I don't think they have any interest in hiring a team president. They have Jarmo Kekalainen, who is a veteran general manager, who is now a senior advisor. Everyone here believes if they fire Kevin Adams, that Jarmo will step in. But I just don't know whether that's enough. There's a sizable amount of discontent with the players in Buffalo, and the only thing that will remedy that is winning. But there are certain players who are underperforming, like Owen Power, who hadn't scored a point in 11 games. And, other players like Alex Tuck, who are having good seasons, who I don't believe he's going to resign. I could be proven wrong, but it's going to make Buffalo, along with Seattle, the most popular phone call before March 6th.
Well, once again, always love to end things on an uplifting note here at the Wraparound. Of course, if you want to read more about the Buffalo Sabres, the World Juniors, Seattle Kraken, NCAA hockey, any of the topics that we've talked about today, of course, head over to the Hockey News. It's been the go-to for all things hockey since 1947. 12 issues packed with game and player insights, plus a free issue to start is a must-have for any fan. Head to thn.com/free and grab your subscription today. That's going to do it for today's episode of The Wraparound. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in and listened to us talking some hockey. We do appreciate it. We will be back with an all-new episode on Thursday. For Michael Augello and Frank Zawrazky, I'm Emma Lingan. This is The Wraparound, and we will see you next time.